On BNC, joining us now is host of DC Today and BNC's Washington Bureau Chief. He's a legend in our business, Dale Walters. And Dale, thanks for joining us on Start Your Day, our first day on the job, and we are honored to have you on the show. First and foremost, you've been around BNC for the inception since last year, and you're doing your own show. Tell us, what is a network like ours? Why is it so important right now?
Well, first of all, I want to say y'all look good. My wife and I turned you on this morning, and when she saw you, she said, if you're going to follow them, it's going to look like Beauty and the Beast. And I said, well, which one's the beauty and which one's the beast? And then she went into the shower and didn't say nothing. So I guess enough said. But what we're trying to do
like her
is really focus. Yeah, I know. Trust me, y'all are an awful lot alike. But what we're trying to do is really focus Washington on things that really count in Washington. We just talked to the former mayor, Sharon Pratt, for instance, about January 6th. And we asked her, how does it look like from an African-American standpoint? So we see the images of them chasing Officer Eugene Goodman, and the story that we're told is that he lured them away. From an African-American standpoint, we should be asking, were they chasing him because he was a black cop? We saw the other African-American officer say that he was collapsing in the rotunda after 5 hours of fighting, saying, they called me the N-word for 15 times. So we take a look at Washington through a different lens. Imagine, for instance, Kwame Kilpatrick coming back after he was impeached twice and giving a speech at CPAC, or Marion Barry after being arrested at the Vista Hotel. So we try to focus the lens differently than what America is used to seeing, and specifically what Black America is used to seeing.
Wow, you're so right, boy. And point of view is everything, right, Dale, is what you're really saying. Point of view, that lens is everything. I'm honored to be on the network with you. I mean, I've known about you since my Georgetown days, and you are Washington, an insider. What can you tell us about the fear? Is it palpable? And this whole thing about Black people in politics, it feels at times like a luxury when we're just fighting so much for survival and respect.
You know what the fear is, and the reason it's palpable is, for the first time, Black people who would be considered bougie, for instance, now understand what Black people in the inner city feel every time a police officer pulls up beside them. So I live in the suburbs of Washington. I now have the same fear as somebody in Minneapolis every time a pickup truck pulls up behind me, because you wonder which one of those people doesn't like me simply because I am Black. So that fear is palpable. And then when you magnify it, when you see white supremacists who actually stormed the Capitol, and then when everything was said and done, they were allowed to go back out and go into their towns, and the judges let them go to Mexico on bail, we realize there are two different Americas. One is Black and one is white, and we know which side of that racial spectrum that we've been on since day one.
Yeah, we see the difference in the Black Lives Matter protests and all the security they had at the Capitol for that, as opposed to the lack of security they had for the insurrection, for the terrorists that happened on January 6th. But I want to talk to you about Washington politics. Obviously, we've seen our first Black president. Now we see our first vice president of color in Kamala Harris. In your opinion, we're making strides in politics, but at the same time, are we making the type of strides that we need to make real progress? Because I think it still brings out the fears in these white supremacists that they're losing their country.
And the answer in a nutshell is no. And the reason isn't because of what white people are doing. It's more along the lines of what Black people aren't doing. And this network is a step in the right direction. You know, the old biblical saying, ask not, get not. I think it might have been a little bit more expanded than that, but that's the bottom line. We represent $1.4 trillion in buying power in this country. We do not put our economic power to use. We put our voting power to use in Georgia, and we saw the net result of that. But now we have to hold the Biden administration's feet to the fire. And I know Joe Biden and I know Kamala Harris. They're both very good people. But the way it works in Washington is he who screams loudest gets the most. And we have to learn how to scream. Now, we don't want to do it like they did on January 6th, where they stormed the Capitol, but we definitely want to make our voices heard, and we want to make everybody understand that we're way behind the 8 ball when it comes to economic empowerment, 1/10 of the dollars that white people have.
But Dale, I want to talk a little bit, if we can, about pressure and a powder keg, and how much you think DC can take. You know, after 8 years of Barack Obama, many people think he can't separate the president who came after him. Many people think Barack Obama and the success gave us Donald Trump. How much pressure can Washington take when you talk about the demands from black people?
Sharon, you hit the nail right on the head. And all you have to do is look back on history. And all the way up until the riots in Detroit and Washington and LA and all the other cities, we were considered, you know, peaceful. You know, they just are nice and happy people, and they enjoy cooking out and having family gatherings, et cetera. And then they just exploded, and they're still asking the question, why did they burn down their own neighborhoods? They burned down their own neighborhoods because they were mad, because we were being trampled upon. Right now, the same is true. We're being trampled on, and you saw what happened last spring with the Black Lives Matter movement, but then you saw what happened this spring with regards to what did it produce. You can't have that many people take to the streets that many times before you have to say to them, you got to give them something, anything. And right now, we're not getting anything. We're getting more lip service than anything else. And as long as that's the case, then the real powder keg in this country may be Black America. And I often tell people, never ever think that Black Americans will just sit back and take it and take it and take it. Before too long, they will explode just like white America is doing, because you're right. It is that reaction to that first black president. When we celebrated, millions of people down on the National Mall, we celebrated, a lot of people cried.
Wow.
Yeah, absolutely.
You just,
that was the reason why
you
Donald
break
Trump
it
was
down. Right. Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, absolutely. Dale, like Sharon, I've been following you for a long time. When I was living in Maryland, when I was in the Air Force, in the military, you do a great job covering D.C. In all your years of living there, have you ever seen the town more divided than it is now?
No, and I'll tell you what scares me is the only time that I could actually think of is if you remember that scene from Birth of a Nation where the Klan marched down Pennsylvania Avenue and everybody realized just how many members of the Klan there were. There's always been this sleeping giant in Washington, D.C., which was the angry white American, but we never saw the numbers until that gathering. So we focus on the people storming the Capitol. Sometimes we should take a look at the number of people who came to Washington who were upset with the election. And that is what scares me more than anything else.
It is fascinating. It is scary. Dale Walters, we adore you. Honored to be next to you. Always good to hear from you. And as good as you are, your wife is even better. Okay? Much more to come.
Y'all look good.
Because she's a lot like you.
Start your day. More of it. I'll take it after a short
Thanks,
break.
Dale.